Okay, so does anyone have anything they'd like to share this morning, or ask any questions or comment on?
I have a share.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Okay, so this is Unreasonable Happiness Part 3. So just noticing like what, okay, so it just, yeah, one, I just really appreciated what you were saying about letting the chakras, checking each of the chakras for feeling a space like a sky and light and being held. That was really helpful. And so today I kind of noticed it sort of came in gradually as I was going through the, yoga and the tapping. I feel like in the tapping. And so I was asking myself the question, what allowed me to fall into it, aside from looking for it, now. And I realized that one thing I was doing is I was using some of the visual feedback from the video, from the screen. It's not a lot of feedback because it's just a little square on Zoom, but it helped me notice what I liked. And I think I found that before too, that the visual of what I liked helped me orient to what was working. And I tend to be fairly kinesthetic in my orientation. So often I can get distracted by discomfort. And so I think that was just really helpful, in addition to, like some of the things you were saying, looking for it. So I just wanted to share that experience. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's kind of an interesting thing about unreasonable happiness. Like I'm glad that you kind of just described it that way. It's like where you said you were looking for how that happened. And I feel almost kind of like you kind of just summarized the essence of Taoist methodology, because what they did was I think the genius, of the, if you will, the meditative practices or the yogic systems, or the systems that work on transformation. What they did was they looked at moments when you're really happy or blissful, or whatever you want to call that. They looked at those moments and they kind of observed, what happens there. And it's this interesting mix where they really bridged the physical world and the spiritual world in a very concrete way. And what I mean by that is that they realized that there's a physiology attached to when you're happy. There's a very concrete physiology attached to when you're happy. Like, for instance, your pupils dilate, your body is relaxed, your tongue salivates, the center of your body feels really open, and actually really bright, and to the point where you feel like something is flowing there. And if, let's say, for instance, like we don't get into the sense of, well, is there something flowing there or not, or is there energy or not? If we get away from all that, whether it's created from just in our mind or not, one thing is actually clear is that it produces actually measurable physiology. Now people know through things such as heart math and things like that, where your heart falls into a certain rhythmic pattern. They actually also found that your body heat can rise significantly through something that's called inner heat, like the kind that we talk about. And they found that there are some very distinct physiological changes. And so whether these are true or not, whether there is real energy or not, it's almost kind of besides the point. the real point here is that actually through these practices, you can get your physiology to be that where you're in a really happy state and you're in an ecstatic state. Um, I forget the name of the Tibetan Lama. He's oftentimes called the happiest man on earth because they found more of the neurotransmitters that
Oh,
actually.
is this the French guy?
Mathieu
Yes.
Ricard.
Yeah.
Yes, Mathieu. Yes, thank you. Glad that you guys are reading up on these things. So, and and so they're finding out that when someone's happy, for instance, the left side of the prefrontal cortex lights up, and it's like very distinct physiological experiences, and they actually correlate straight back to the experiences that you have. And so the experience that you have is you have like bright light and energy, or something that feels like energy, flowing down your central column. And it's not kind of a subtle feeling. It's subtle in the very beginning, but it's this very distinct feeling that flows. And this feeling of happiness, or this happy emotion, starts coursing through the center of your body. And so these are physiological things. And what they found is that actually three things determine this phenomenon. And what they've done is that by using things such as yoga or the yogic practices, they basically, well, I should mention the three things first instead of the method. The three things that they found that determine this kind of state is basically the experience of spaciousness, where things just feel really free and open. And it's kind of like what a person experiences when they look out into a vista and just feel that, wow, that openness, and feel like all your worries just release, and you're looking into vastness and you feel free and just feel good. And so that spaciousness, or what you get when you look at the sky. So if you look at, for instance, the Tibetan tradition or the Taoist traditions, or even in some yoga traditions, they actually have you just look at the sky, or they have you look out from a mountain, or and so on and so forth. And actually, you can use the beach as well, because if you look into the horizon, you get the same effect. It's kind of like what you'll notice is that what was most available that allowed for that to happen. And if you look at most Taoist schools, they're on the top of a mountain. And so if you watch movies, they're all on top of the mountain, and so that you can get that spacious feel. The second one is actually the experience of light, where things get really like bright. And then you actually start feeling bright and light. And so, and you'll notice that when you're happy, everything seems brighter. And then the last one is the experience of energy, which is actually kind of like a buildup of charge. And it's actually, this one is a little bit more not subtle. They're all kind of subtle because they're kind of, it's kind of like the background. It's like when you watch a movie, most people don't realize that it's the lighting that affects how everything looks, and what kind of light you have. And so when we have an experience, it's actually kind of like a movie experience, and we don't realize how much light impacts it. And then there's a certain kind of charge, and charge is kind of like when you feel hugged and you feel that nice warmth, and you feel really loved, and that warmth that you feel, that's actually what we call energy, that experience of something there. And it is a physical sensation, but it doesn't just come from a hug, because it's not any hug. You've gotten hugs, but there's a hug that you can just sink into. You kind of feel warm, and you feel like you're loved, and that extra something special feel. That extra something special feel is actually what we call energy or charge. And so, and it's actually the same sensation that you get when you cheat each other, and actually your heart is filled with that chi sensation, which is actually the sensation of charge, you actually realize, oh, that's the same feeling that I get when I feel loved and I feel embraced. And so when a person is experiencing, so it's kind of like what you want to imagine is you're in a beach when the sun is really nice and bright. It's probably why people like beaches, where you feel spacious and happy. And then you're having a wedding and you're embracing your lover, or some version of that. It's kind of like probably an externalized experience. But then the question becomes, what the Taoist asks is that, does it mean that I always need to live in under ideal circumstances? That doesn't seem so good. And what they realize is that, what if you just have the physiological response? What happens if you just have the physiological response? Would you still feel the same thing? And what they found is that even if you don't have any of the external input, because the external input is just there to get you that physiological response, they found that actually if you have the physiological response, you have the same experience. You have the same kind of bliss or happiness that you experience when those circumstances happen. And so these practices, such as the yoga or like the Gold series, they're there to open the body so you can experience spaciousness. When the body opens and becomes spacious, it naturally starts becoming brighter. And then you use basically the chi to charge it up. And then you end with the meditation so that you can practice inner heat so that you can actually physiologically experience the happiness. And so that's kind of like the background, if you will, the kind of the context, like where spirituality and practical, instinctual, or spiritual experience and practical, instinctual physiology, gets married so that you can have a more stable spiritual experience on an ongoing basis. It's actually one of the reasons why I always jokingly I said you're your own drug, factory or your own drug supplier, because it's why people do plant medicine or do drugs so that they can have this mystical experience, so that they can really feel bonded to life and they can experience this kind of unity and basically what I said, like being at the beach, being with your lover, being embraced, feeling blissful. And so, but what you do is you're bringing it inside, and you're actually bringing that union to with yourself. And some people think, well, isn't it artificial? Shouldn't it just happen authentically? And what I'd like to say is that it needs to be authentic in relation to yourself, because if you just approach it from a technical perspective, ironically, it doesn't happen. So what you're really learning to do is you're learning how to fall in love with yourself. Like, you're learning how to accept and love yourself. And so you can't actually you can't really fake that experience. But anyway, so I wanted to just give this background, and then dialing that more into what you said, which is, kind of that it was the aesthetics and you're so kinesthetic. So when you do this exploration, a big part of why this has to be authentic is if you're just doing it technically, you're going to approach it in a way where instinctually it doesn't work for you, because you're not doing this in a way that instinctually works for you. Like, for instance, when I first started, focusing was really difficult. I had to force myself to do it, and it oftentimes just didn't work. Instead, in my case, I needed to allow my attention to follow where my attention wanted to go. And so, and that concept, fortunately, is called, the concept existed in the system that I learned, which was very fortunate, because otherwise, the other meditation methods that I'd learned prior to that, I just struggled a lot with them. They didn't actually work. And when I found attention on attention, it was a lifesaver, because I got to focus on the experience of basically focusing what my attention was doing. And later on, by looking at like tests and things like that, and I found what like most people would consider ADD or things like that. And it wandered, but because I was studying my own attention, fortunately, what happened was I got to learn how to focus in a way that worked for my brain. And that was a very important experience. And it brought balance, but I needed to do it in a way that worked for my system. And I feel like oftentimes it's kind of like getting on a bike that's a little bit too big for you. And yes, you can adjust to it, but you have to strain your body to adjust to it because it doesn't really fit you. It's like wearing shoes that don't fit your body. And so as you are doing this, it's actually like really important that you learn how to do it in a way where you're not straining to make it happen, but where you're doing it naturally. And so essentially, when you found, oh, aesthetically, this is actually, like, you've just found a new way in. And as you keep doing that, you will actually find better and better ways to dial into it that actually don't require external input, where it will actually be confined to within your own self and your own mind. And eventually you realize, oh, it's just really all in my mind. But you kind of, you really kind of need to actually get there. It is kind of all hypothetical otherwise. And it's actually quite the journey, because you need to work with yourself quite a bit. So
can I just share one more thing that was kind of funny about the experience?
Absolutely.
I really had to kind of reverse engineer it, because the way I realized I was feeling unreasonably happy is I started to have happy thoughts. Like, it started to be like, oh, it's really pretty out, and like, isn't spring great? And then like, oh, these are the kind of things I get to do today. And I was like, oh, wait. But you can see how it's like, sort of, if you're not looking for what you said, like the physiological markers, you almost get distracted by the thought. And I just
you don't even know you're happy.
It was kind of, you don't even know you're happy. And it's just like, oh, it's just a nice day, it must be the weather.
Yeah.
I was just like kind of cracking up, because I was like, oh yeah, that's what it is. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, and thank you so much for all the like all the theory and the like how people get there. That makes so much sense. I was thinking about also the guy who tracks facial expressions, Eckert.
Yes.
Paul
yes.
Ekman.
Yeah, Paul Ekman. Yes.
And
Paul
I
Ekman.
remember coming across him like years ago and going, that makes so much sense. I wonder if you smile, it could make you happy. And I feel like there's so much in the Taoist arts that is like detailing exactly that. And it makes so much sense.
Yes. Actually, Paul Ekman and all his studies actually the research spurred, and there's an entire science behind, and actually people now teaching with the science how to smile where you feel happiness. And they found that the muscle around the eyes, you know, where the crow's feet is, the crow's feet, like at the outside corner of your eye, only when that muscle or the muscle underneath your eyes and around your eyes, when you smile, where your eyes engage, does a person experience actual happiness. If just the corners of the mouth comes up, they found that actually the person doesn't feel happiness. And it's called smiling with the eyes. And so there actually now are actual schools where they teach someone to smile, and you know, they have them like basically put a pencil in your mouth and smile. Because actually, even though your mouth doesn't move, if your mouth corner goes up high enough, it starts engaging your eye because they're integrative muscles. And you know, and that's actually what we do actually in the Tower schools. It's actually, we also say smile because it engages your stomach meridian and the meridians around it, and actually the muscles fall, and by the time it reaches your eye, you feel happiness. So it's actually the same thing, just using a little bit of different expression, but you're correct, actually, it's the same thing. So one way of actually experiencing happiness is actually engaging, you know, like basically smiling. And what you do is that you engage all of them, because otherwise, if you only use some of them, if you only use pupil dilation, then your pupils will get tired. If you only use smile, believe it or not, you can smile to the extent where actually your facial muscles in relation to your smile gets fatigued and can actually become chronically tense. I know this from personal experience. Yeah, I started getting cramps when I smiled because I was smiling so much, and I stopped having to smile for a period because I had a smile injury, which is not something you hear very often. But and that's when I realized, oh, that's why there's so many details. What they do is they actually bring the entire physiology of bliss so that you can experience it in a relaxed, natural manner. Because when something like that happens, there's a lot of different things that get engaged. So, but thank you for that extra mention. That was good. Yeah. So, okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Now, welcome. That was a good discussion on unreasonable happiness. Now, I think anyone who listens into it will understand, oh, it's because you're actually putting your physiological body into the state so that you can have that experience. But also, it's not just a technique. It actually does need to have a genuine experience, because you need to actually find it in a way that's authentic to you, in a way that works for your own biology. And so I think that will be really good. So, okay, now with that, I am done. So I need to actually get going here. For anyone who has anything else they'd like to share or ask, please write in. Other than that, you all have an unreasonably happy day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.